So, all right, so here's how the book opens. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Now, this is a hard, what would you call, narrative section to get a handle on, because in order to understand it properly, you have to actually look behind it. So there are a lot of pieces of old stories in the Old Testament that flesh out the meaning of these lines. And I can give you a quick overview of it. One of the ideas that lurks underneath these lines, although you can't tell because it's in English, you have to look at the original languages, and of course I don't speak the original languages, so I've had to use secondary sources. Too bad for me. But the without form and void and the deep idea, you see, that's associated with this notion of endless deep potential. So for example, the words that are used to represent without form and void are something like, well, one is I'm going to get this partly wrong, tohu wabohu, and another one is teom. And it's important to know this because those words are associated with an earlier Mesopotamian word, which is Tiamat. And Tiamat was a dragon-like creature who represented the salt water. And Tiamat had a husband named Apsu, and Tiamat and Apsu were sort of locked together in kind of a sexual embrace. And it was that locking together of Tiamat and Apsu, and I would say that's potential and order, something like that, or chaos and order. They were locked together, and it was that union of chaos and order that gave rise in the old Mesopotamian myth, which is the Anu Melish, to being, to the old gods first, and then eventually, as creation progressed, to human beings themselves. And so there's this idea lurking underneath these initial lines that God is akin to that which confronts the unknown and carves it into pieces and makes the world out of its pieces. And the thing that it confronts is something like it's something like a predatory reptile, or it's something like a dragon, or it's something like a serpent. And I think part of the reason for that, and this is a very deep and ancient idea, is that this is where it gets so complicated to do the translation, is partly that is how human beings created our world. Like, we went out beyond the confines of our safe spaces, let's say. Our safe spaces defined by the tree or defined by the fire. And we actively voyaged outward to the places that we were afraid of and didn't understand, and conquered and encountered things out there, like literally animals, like mammoths and snakes and predators of all sorts. And it was as a consequence of that active, brave engagement with the domain of what we did not understand, the terrifying domain of what we did not understand, that the world in fact was generated. And that idea lurks deeply inside the opening lines of Genesis. And it's a profound idea in my estimation. And I think also that the way our brains are structured, and this is something that I'm going to try to develop more today, is that the ancient circuits that our ancestors used to deal with the beyond which they had already explored, so that would be home territory. So that's that unknown territory that's characterized by promise, because there are new things out there, but also by intense danger, right? Because we're prey animals, especially millions of years ago when we were very young. We had to go out there and encounter things that were terribly dangerous. And there was a kind of, let's say, paternal courage that went along with that. And it was the spirit of paternal courage that enabled the conquering of the unknown. And there's no difference between the conquering of the unknown and the creation of habitable order. And the thing is that as our cognitive faculties have developed to the point where we're capable of very high levels of abstraction, the underlying biological architecture has remained the same. And so I don't think that it's too much to say at all that the circuits that engage you, for example, when you're having an argument about something fundamental with someone that you love, and so you're trying to structure the world around you jointly to create a habitable space that you can both exist within, you're using the same circuits, the abstracted version, you're using the same circuits that our archaic ancestors would have used when they went out into the unknown itself to encounter beasts and predators and geographical unknowns. It's the same circuit. It's just that we do it abstractly now instead of concretely. But of course it has to be the same circuit, because evolutionary is a very conservative force. And what else would it be? And this is also why I think it's so easy for us to demonize those people who are our enemies, because our enemies confront us with what we don't want to see. And and because of that, our first response is to use snake detection circuitry on them, and that accounts for our capacity, almost immediate capacity, to demonize. And there's a reason for that. It's not a trivial thing. First of all, it's a very fast response, and second of all, it's a response that has worked for a very, very, very long time. And so, you know, one of the variants of the hero, and I would consider a variant of the hero like a fragment of the picture of God, is the heroic warrior who slays the enemy, right? And of course, that's not precisely a politically correct representation of the hero in modern times. And well, and no wonder, but it's still something that you go watch in movies all the time and admire, right? It's like this one of the how many plots are there? Romance and adventure, that's about it. And most of the adventure genre is, well, there's some enemy that's lurking in some form. It could be human, it could be alien, and someone rises up to go and confront it and maintain order. You know, it's like, there's no getting away from that story. And if you don't have that in your own life, then you play a video game where that's happening, or you watch a movie where that's happening, or you read a book where that's happening, and it captures you, even if you're atheistic and your only religion is Star Wars, you know. And it's still, well, really, right? It still captures your imagination, and you act like someone who's possessed by religious fervor when you line up for 3 days to be the first one into the theater, you know, and all the while claiming that you're atheistic to the core. It's like,